Hey, this is Lisa Landry. Welcome to Menace to Society. I am in Tulsa, Oklahoma with Ms. Loletha Prudom. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And I'm happy that you're here too. We just went for family dinner on Sunday afternoon, which was really wonderful, like old-fashioned America. What year were you born?
1928.
So that's almost 100 years.
Well, not quite. It's 89.
Oh, you like to put me in my place about the age. Okay.
Now, see, most women would shave it.
I'm kind of one of those women.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, I like to brag.
Yeah?
So I say I'm 89, and I just can't wait to get 90.
Why is that? Is it for the party?
Well, not necessarily the party, 'cause I party all the time. So that's nothing new to me, partying. But it's just kind of something special about it, that you're older and smarter than everybody else.
You are a very wise woman.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yes.
You don't live 89 years without learning something.
Your name, Prudom, that's a Louisiana name.
Yes, my husband's family came from Prudom Bay in Canada.
Okay.
And they migrated to Louisiana. And then they left there, and some of the family came to Oklahoma. And that's where I met my husband and married him here in Oklahoma.
And why would they come from Louisiana, where they had a bunch of other people who spoke French, over here to Oklahoma, where I don't think there's a lot of French speakers?
No, but the conditions for black people was better than what it was in Louisiana.
And what year was that?
Well, I'm not sure about my husband's family, but my mother's family came to Oklahoma. She was born in 1901, and they came to Oklahoma when she was 6 years old.
Where'd they come from?
From Louisiana.
Okay, so they came from Louisiana too?
Mm-hmm. Leontine was my grandmother. That was my mother's mother. She was born in Marksville, Louisiana. She married a guy, his name was Peter Goodo. The Goodos, the Prudoms, and the Guillerys, and the Rideaus, and all of those people, they were originally from Louisiana.
Yeah, I'm from New Orleans. Yeah, those are a lot of Creole names.
Migrated from there. Some of them came to Oklahoma. Some of them went to Arkansas. Some of them went to California. And because the conditions in Louisiana were just horrible.
Yeah.
They had a lot of sharecroppers and slave owners and this type of thing. People, they just got fed up with them. Mm-hmm. So they left. And my mother's family came to Oklahoma. And that's where she stayed until she died.
Well, because it's 1901, that's not that long after the Civil War, the first one. God help us. And Reconstruction. So that's one generation after? Or some of the same people who had just been, quote unquote, freed.
Yeah.
From slavery. So what all was happening that they had to leave their home?
Well, my mother's family lived on a farm. They were what they called sharecroppers.
And let's tell some of these listeners who might not know what sharecropper is.
All right. These were white men that owned large farms or plantations. You know what a plantation is, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Where they had the big house and the land and the bunch of little raggedy cabins in the back where the black people lived. And they did all the work. And when they got old, too old to go work in the fields and everything, the old men and the old ladies were kept there at the house where they took care of all the little children that were too little to go work in the fields. And then that left all of the others able to go work in the fields. But they would work all the year, and all they got was what they ate and where in this cabin they stayed in. And at the end of the year in wintertime, they got maybe a pair of shoes and a new pair of overalls and a shirt so they could work through the cold weather.
And they were working on their land?
No, they were working on the rich white man's land. And that was the plantation. Mm-hmm. And they lived there, and they called them sharecroppers, but they never got a share of the crops. They just worked and worked and worked. But they never got enough. The man says, well, you didn't make enough to pay off your debt. So you were always in debt. You didn't have money to make it through the winter. So when the winter came, your family was bare and they were hungry and everything. So you stayed there through the winter and you kept chopping the wood and preparing the land for the crops and taking care of the cattle and all of this. And you never got out. It just kept going round and round and round.
It's feudalism. Basically, it's like you're still working for the knight that owns the, I don't know, Sherwood Forest or whatever. It's slavery reboot. It's like you're going to call it something else.
Yeah.
We're going to call it this, so now you're just going to owe us money for working this land that we're letting you live on because we're so good.
Yes.
Basically.
That was a lie they told.
Yeah.
And that's why when my grandparents got a chance, they hopped a freight train with nothing. And what made my grandparents leave Louisiana, they were living on this farm, and all of the younger people, the men, the women, they would work in the fields all day long. And the old people that were sick and couldn't go work in the fields anymore, they had to stay in the compound, in the cabins. And they had to take care of all the little children and cook for the field workers and this type of thing. It was just another form of slavery.
Right.
And it was just horrible what they would do to those people. And these men that were over them, they were just horrible. And they would go out in the fields with those black people, and they would look around, and they had a lot of beautiful girls, young girls, and he'd pick out the one he wanted. And when it was time for them to go to the house at mealtime, then he'd pick out one, and he'd say, well, you can't go eat because you didn't do enough of work. You got to stay here with me. And so this old lady that worked there in the fields, she told those young girls, said, when he tell you that, that means he's going to rape you. And she explained to them what they were going to do. And so this particular day, he told this young girl, she's about 15, 16, that she couldn't go eat because she didn't do enough work. And so the old lady had told her, she said, now, when he tells you that, she said, he's going to make you stay here and he's going to rape you. And she said, but I'm going to tell you what you do. She said, when you act like you're willing. She said, when he pull his pants down, she said, you just catch his penis and yank it as hard as you can. She said, and then you run like hell till you get to the house. The girl did it. And he just fell out on the ground. He was just incapacitated. And when he finally got up enough energy to make it to the house, well, he got up there and he caught her, took a rope and tied her hands to a tree limb, and then took his whip and whipped her till she was blistered all down her back. And they couldn't do a thing about it. And that was because she fought back. Mm-hmm. My grandfather said, he said, I'm not raising my children for this. So there was a man that was coming through there. I never knew who he was, but he was helping to free those slaves. And he was a white man. And my grandfather heard about him, and he got in touch with him. And he told him, he said, well, you just take your family and you pack up whatever you all got that you can take with you. And he said, you meet me down here at this certain spot by the railroad track at, certain night. And he said, I'll slow down every night. And if you're there, I'll signal to you. If you're not there, then I'll try another night. And the women wore, to keep warm and everything, they would take the feed sacks and the flour sacks, and they would make underskirts. And underskirts, just another word for slips. And they would make those, and they had a drawstring at the waist where they tied at the waist, and it was kind of gathered. And my grandmother would take scraps, and she'd sew them onto these second underskirt, not the top one, but the ones closer to the body. And she made these little pockets in there. And every time my grandfather would get a nickel, a dime, a quarter, he'd give it to her, and she'd put them in them little pockets, and then she'd sew those little pockets up. And when they left, she had all the money, because if the man had any money, the first thing they did was went through all his pockets. Whatever he had, they took it. So they didn't expect her, because they didn't give their wives anything, so they didn't expect her to have money or anything. And whenever the white men would come around, my grandmother would grab the little children, and they'd start crying, and she'd be holding them, and he'd say, what's wrong with that baby? She said, oh, they sick. And she'd cover herself up with the baby on her, patting them and trying to pacify them. And the little kids were scared. They weren't sick, they were scared. And that's how they got their little money. And can you imagine sewing a nickel, a dime? Most people come in, they throw that in a little bowl on the dresser for a parking meter change or something and never think about it. But she sewed all them little pockets. And when they needed something, Grandpa would try to figure out how much they needed, and she'd go in there and rip one of them little pockets. And the same thing happened, not changing the subject, but with my parents. After the banks crashed in 29, everybody, all the black people lost all their money, because if the little money if they had, they put it in the bank. They never got a dime of it back. And so we had a hen house, chicken house. It was just a little old square frame building that Daddy had knocked together with odds and ends boards. And in the floor, they just had dirt and, sand and stuff on that floor. And they had little rows of nests up. They had them up about halfway the wall, because if you put them on the ground, the rats and the snakes and stuff would catch your chicken and get your eggs. So they'd put them up there, and they had a little post and the chickens would walk up and get in the nest. So he went back in the corner of the chicken house and dug a hole, and he put their little money in fruit jars in this hole in the back corner of the chicken house. And then he'd throw that droppings from the chickens and stuff all over the floor back there. And nobody knew it was back there but him and Mama. And in the summertime, when he'd go peddle his produce, he'd raise a big garden and he'd take it to town and sell it. And he'd sell watermelons, cantaloupes, vegetables, and all this. And he'd bring that money home, and he'd put it in those jars. And when he died, that's when Mama took my oldest brother out there to the chicken house and showed him where it was, and told him, she said, you watch this spot and you make sure it stay covered all the time. She said, don't you tell nobody it's there. And that's how we survived until Mama could, get a little work and get a little money together. And this is what they had to do, because if they knew she had $20, they'd have took it. And there was nothing she could do. And this was what people lived through. And the white people prospered from this, because they ruled by fear. So this night came, and my grandfather, my grandmother, and all of my mother's brothers and sisters, and she was just a little old bitty girl, about 6, 7 years old. They was down there hiding in the weeds and the bushes next to the railroad track. Well, he had to stop because it was I don't know what the proper name, what they called it, but it was a water tank and a coal tank and things, because the trains ran on coal and they used the water for steam. So when they would pull up there to load the train with coal and water, he would have a boxcar door open, and then he'd show them where to go. He'd just, signal them to go, and they would run down in the dark, and they'd crawl in this boxcar and then shut the door. And when he got through putting the coal and the water on, then he just gone up the road. Well, when he got to Oklahoma, he had a special place, and he had connections with the black people that lived down around Coosa, Oklahoma. And they would come down there in their wagons at night down this little trail down through the woods and be there where he had to stop and put coal and water on. And when he'd check it out and make sure it was clear, then they'd get off the train, and while he was taking on coal and water, they would run down this dirt trail, and these wagons would be down there, and these people would take them back to Coosa out there in the country. And they would split them up, say, like my grandmother and grandfather and all their kids. That was a group, So then when they get there, well, they'd put 3 or 4 of them here, 2 or 3 of them there. And when the people would come, well, then they would sit there, and they just kind of mingle them into their families. But most of them were those Creoles. Mm-hmm. And they were the Goodos and the Ritos and the Theories and Bazarts and all of those. And they would just mingle in. Well, they all sort of looked alike. They kind of looked maybe part Mexican, part Creole.
Yeah, I'm from New Orleans, so yeah.
You've seen
Creole,
a lot of that.
That's a very specialized culture.
Yes.
Creole.
And they would feed them into there, and then they would go just working on. Well, the people that was just getting the work done. That's all they wanted. And then gradually, as they got on their feet, well, then they'd get them a little place, and they'd ease their kids on back into their family, and nobody ever knew the difference.
So you just say it's extra field hands coming in for a
well, you know, they would
season,
say that's my nephew or that's my cousin, and he come to stay with me, and they didn't care. They had to work, getting the work done. So, you know, if you got a job and people you need extra help and people show up, well, you're not going, and they don't have the restrictions now where you got to fill out all these papers and fingerprints and all that stuff, you know, check your background. When a good hand showed up and you got out there in the field and you kept your head down and you just worked all day, they wanted you. And that's how they assembled themselves into the community.
And then after a while, your family's all back with you.
Yeah. Just like, say, you all come by here and y'all just start hanging around here with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my sister's daughter. My sister died and she didn't have no place to go, so she come stay with me. And I said, that's my niece. And that's my brother's child or my cousin's child. And her folks died. They had the malaria or whatever, you know. And they come to stay with me. Nobody asked any questions. Because you go past her house back then, and you had little brown children, little white children, little yellow children. Some of them had little pretty hair. Some of them had little kinky hair. They were just all blended in together. And long as they was working and didn't cause any trouble, nobody asked questions. I'm sure that some of them knew what was going on, but they had all this good labor and no problems because they didn't want to make problems, because then they'd draw attention to themselves. And if you don't make waves, nobody says anything. They just get a little bit more work done every day, so they happy.
So y'all were undocumented people coming from Louisiana.
Yeah. That's what we were.
And what year? That's 1901. So
Yeah,
we still had an underground railroad, even though we didn't need an underground railroad to bring Americans.
Well, no,
who were
evidently
free.
we did.
Yeah, well, maybe we still need one.
Because that's how my mother and them never would have gotten here if that man hadn't put them on that freight train. And can you imagine you leaving everything you've ever known, the place where you was born and raised, whatever relatives that you could keep in touch with, and then you take your wife and all your little children and everything that you possessed after all these years of hard work, you put it into a few tow sacks, and the older boys put those sacks on their back, and the mother and the father, they took turns packing the little children. Like my mother and them, you know, they couldn't last very long, so the big older ones would pick them up and carry them, and they made it. And that's what you call survival. They had the strength and the courage to do this, and without and you know, people will say, well, all white people are bad, or all black people are bad, or they you know, some particular group, they pick them out and they say something wrong with them. They not this, they not that. But those people had to be good. They had to be good in a lot of people. And it's like this white man that was working. He had a good job on the railroad, and he was willing to chance losing all of that to help these people get their children out of Louisiana.
Yeah.
And you just think about what would have happened to him if they had caught him. And he eased them on, and he would get word to those people down around there. He says, I'm going to bring, y'all meet me, because I'm going to bring a bunch with me. And now just imagine, he had my grandmother, my grandfather, and there was my mother and my Aunt Ludy and my Aunt Jo. Her name is Josephine. And then he had all those boys. So they had about close to 10 kids with the parents. And you just think about, this man is risking everything. At that time, he had a good job, you know, working on the railroad. All he had to do was stop at those way stations and take on water, tank of coal, and he just ease them in the boxcars. And they didn't pay him. They didn't give him anything. He wasn't doing it for the money. You know, you could say, well, I understand it, if he was getting paid. But that was what he was doing for humanity. And, you know, he felt the same way that my grandfather did. Those girls didn't deserve to be raped and, you know, done that, and then beaten because she got the better of him. And, you know, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And they just did that. And you can imagine how they felt when they got there here to Oklahoma, in a strange land. And the people that was helping them, they might have known one or two of them, but the greater majority of them, they had never met them. And they were people who had gotten out of Louisiana and established themselves down there around Grayson, Oklahoma, and around Coosa, Oklahoma. And they settled there, but they were still reaching out and taking them in. And see, just like tomorrow, if somebody came in and you and Kim was here, and they would say, "Oh, I saw that's my nieces," and if they'd look at them and say, "I'd say you ought to see their grandma," or something like that. I'd tell them something crazy. And like a woman asked me one time, she said, "What are you?" And she says, "And don't tell me you're black, because I know you're not black." I said, "Well, if you want to know the truth," I said, "my grandpa was jet black." I said, "and my grandmother was Snow White." And they were so outdone, because if you tell them, well, my grandfather was white and my grandmother was black, oh, that they could understand that. But then when you say, well, my grandpa was jet black and my grandma was white, and that just blew the whole thing, because they didn't want to accept that. It was all right for a white man to rape a black woman and have children. And at that time, the little children, the little half-breeds is what they called them. They called them yard children, because they lived in the backyard in the slave quarters. But their daddy was white, and their half-brothers and sisters lived in the big house, and they lived in the backyard in the slave shanties. And that was life in the South. And that's what Trump wants to do now, is start all this stuff back over again, because they want free labor. It's not nothing about class or privileges or nothing. They want a person to be out there cutting their yard, washing their car. They want the black women in there cleaning their houses, raising their children, and taking care of them. And they don't want any of them, the poor whites or blacks, educated, because an educated person can defend themselves. And when you're not educated, you're lost. And that's why they're trying to take all of the education system and put it into these charter schools and things. It's because this way they can decide who gets an education. And they don't want and see, once they uneducate these people and they don't have anything means, then they can put them back in their yards and in the fields and in their houses and everything, and things will be like it used to be.
When we talk about how things used to be, I think you are an expert on that, because you went to school in a very different environment. I went to segregated schools. I lived in segregated cities. I lived in a time when you went downtown and all the stores like Crest and Newberry's and Montgomery Ward's, places like that, they had two water fountains. One was colored and one was white. And if you drank out of that white water fountain and you was black, then you go to jail. They'd arrest you for that. And they had two bathrooms. One was colored and one was white. And I don't care how bad you had to use the bathroom, if it was somebody in the colored one. If the white people walked in the colored bathroom, they could walk across the line in front of you and go use it. They didn't say anything. It was all right. But if you went in that white bathroom, if it wasn't nobody standing in line, it was a line with 10 people in it, in front of that colored bathroom, you had to wait. Or if you wanted to drink of water, there was a white fountain, well, a fountain here with white on it, fountain over here with colored on it. And you had to stand in line. Nobody touching this other water fountains, but you better not touch it, because if you did, they'd take you to jail. And this is before for-profit prisons, right?
Oh, Lord,
so
yes.
It was harder to get arrested back then, I reckon.
Well, no, what they did, they didn't arrest them, they just killed them. They hung them and they threatened them, and they disappeared and you never seen them again. But this was what they did. And they wanted you to go work for them, and you'd work for them, and they'd pay you whatever they wanted to pay you, and nothing you could do. And if you came to work for me, and I was just one of them mean, old, hateful women, and you say, I can't put up with her no more, so I'm going to be done hit upside the head. And you would quit working for me, and you'd say, well, I'll find me another job. It could be 10 other white women needed somebody desperately, but they wouldn't hire you, because this white woman had done told him, you don't want her in your house. Tell them anything they would say about you, they would believe them. And that's the horrible part of it, was because that was slavery. Any way you stack it, you forcing a person to do your work, and you go out there, you clean their house, you cook their meals, and you raise their children, and then
You get whitelisted. It's like blacklisted, but by
if
white
you
people.
tried to work, go if you got tired and you wanted to change jobs, and see, just like you, if you decide today, well, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm quitting. You tell Kim, I'm through with this, I want to do something else, I'm gone. She'll say, okay, and you gone. But Kim go out there and she'll tell everybody she know what you can do, she know what you know. She'll say, no, you don't want to hire her because she's dishonest, she ain't gonna work, you can't depend on her. And none of the rest of them will hire you. They're persecuting innocent people. And if you don't want to work for me, well, maybe we just have a personality conflict.
Oh, that still happens, Miss Loletha.
I know it does. All
Yeah.
of these things happen.
A lot of times when you're better at something than other people, they'll do that same to you.
My mother was working for this white lady and she ran a beauty shop. And she and my mother just clicked. And because Mama was a very neat, clean, tidy, hardworking person. But she just did her job and she went home. She tell you, I got to leave from here at 4 o'clock because I got to go home. My children going to be home from school. And if you want me like that, then I'll do it. But if not, I can't do it because I don't have a husband. I don't have anybody else but me to take care of my children. Well, one woman told her, well, you got to put, because my children come first. My mama said, no, my family comes first. She said, well, if you don't work for me, you're not going to work for nobody. So Mama said, well, that's okay too. So Mama went and she quit. Well, 2 or 3 of those other ladies had been saying, Ada, I sure wish you'd come work for me. Mama told them she was free. Well, I'd like to hire you, but if I hire you, Miss So-and-so going to be so mad. So this little lady, she ran a beauty shop up on 6th Street, right down the street from where the Dairy Queen and thing used to be. I'll never forget that lady. Her name was Georgia Rooks. And it was just she and her husband. This was at the beginning of World War II. I don't know how she connected with Mama. She might have known Mama from some of those other people that would come in and out of her shop. And she drove this little old car, and it was a little 1-seat coupe, and it had a rumble seat on the back. You don't even know what a rumble seat is, do you?
No, ma'am.
It was a little folded seat. It was a little trunk on the back. It was a little cab, and then the little front and its back was around like this. And you could open it up and pull it back, and it was a seat back there. Well, she came and asked Mama if Mama would come and work for her. And she said, I'll pay you what you make, she said, but she ran a beauty shop in a house. She said, I just want you to come and straighten up the house for me and keep my shop towels and things washed. And she didn't have no washing machine. Mama had to wash them on the rubberboard, hang them outdoors on the line and all her shop stuff and clean it up. And then she'd clean and sweep and mop the shop. And then if Mama stayed a little bit over time, she'd put Mama in that little car and bring her home. And every weekend, her daddy lived out in the country and he raised a big garden and stuff. And she'd say, Ada, when you get through, let me know. She said, you might have to wait a few minutes because I got to finish Miss So-and-so. She said, I'm going to take you home. Mama'd get in that little car and her mama'd sit up there in the front seat and get to the house. She'd open that trunk. She would have all kind of vegetables and stuff in there. She said, Ada, don't you never let Daddy know that I don't eat that stuff. She said, ain't nowhere in the sun. Me and my husband can eat this stuff. And honey, she'd get out of that car and she's a little old switchy woman. Her and Mama'd be hauling that stuff in the house. And if we was home from school, Mama'd say, y'all come here and help me. And honey, we'd unload all that stuff. She'd have enough stuff for Mama to feed us for a couple of weeks. Mama worked for her until they called him up for World War II. And so she closed her shop and stuff, and he left and went to the Army. And she went back and lived out there with her folks and things. And then after he got established, she left and went and followed him in the Army. So we never seen her again. Mm-hmm. But it was just the difference. I had this one lady that she and her husband ran a little grocery store. They asked Mama, could I come and babysit for them? I was about 14 on Saturdays, because on Saturdays she would go down to the store and help him in the store because that was the busy day. And so I'd go down there and I'd stay with these 2 little kids, and the little boy was about 2 and the little girl was about 4. And I would keep them all day. Well, I'd get tired of just sitting there. She had this extra bedroom. That woman had clothes washed and just piled up on that bed. Well, I'd go in there and I would fold up all those clothes in neat little piles for on the bed, and I'd take care of the little kids. And close time for them to come home, I'd give the little kids a bath, and they were sweet little kids, just real good. And I was just bored sitting there doing nothing, so I'd just do these things. So she started, when she'd get ready to pay me, she'd give me an extra 50 cents. Now, mind you, I was getting $1 to go out there and stay all day and babysit. She would give me $1.50, and she'd say, "But now, Loletha, don't you tell nobody." She'd say, "If they asked you what do I pay you, just tell them say $1." And Christmas came. She bought me the prettiest skirt, wool skirt and sweater and things, and she'd tell me, "Don't tell nobody who gave it to you." Well, Mama knew she was giving it to me, but she said, "They'll have a fit." She said, "But when you fold my clothes and iron them, and when I come home, the kids is bathed and I can put them to bed." I was doing it because I was bored. I mean, just sitting there and doing nothing, and I can't do that. I wasn't raised like that. Mama said, "Idle mind is the devil's workshop." And if you sitting there, she'd say, "Here, you fix that baby's clothes, or you do this." And you don't say, "I ain't got nothing to do, Mama," because she'd find something for you to do. And this was, I was raised like this. And that lady, boy, when they had to close their store and leave, he had to go to World War II. And I really missed them because she was always finding something for me, a nice blouse, a pair of a skirt, a top, or something. And that winter, she went through her closet and found me a winter coat and all of this. And you would so poor, a coat cost $12, but who had $12? I mean, that just wasn't there. And that was the kind of time that I grew up. And when I look at people like Donald Trump, I don't believe in man, but I do believe in God. And I really believe that one day people like him are going to pay. And, the Bible teaches us that one day the bottom will be on top and the top will be on the bottom. And I believe that. And I said, how do I expect any more out of them when they crucified Christ and he hadn't done nothing? He just came to save them. And when people talk about, hardships and things like that, they don't know what that is. You work hard all day long for 50 cents. And I remember my dad had died, and Mama had 7 children she was taking care of by herself. She would leave Maddie, my second oldest sister, at home with my little brother, and she would take the rest of us to the fields. And when we would be picking cotton, she'd have me and my brother, that the only one I got left. She would have us with her, and she would have 2 rows of cotton she was picking, and we'd be picking with her, and so she could watch us. And we were little bitty kids, and now if you did that, they'd put you in jail. They said child abuse. So, where's the justice in this world? Make up your mind. If in one period it's slavery, and in the other thing is child abuse. So how do you figure it?
Right.
And if you think about it, it'll drive you crazy just thinking about their rationale.
Do you think it's just labeling, or just laws getting changed, or another way to get people to have to pay for daycare? Or do you think about educating the kids? Like, you've been on this earth for almost 9 decades. You figured out more than me.
Well, I tell you what I think it is. I think it's a feeling of superiority. They think that they earned this. And no one has the right to enslave another person. And you do that by finding their weaknesses and their needs, and you act on it. And when your children are hungry, well, if they say you got to go work for $5 and that's the only money you can find, you do it. Because if somebody told me, come in here right now and said they were going to harm you and Kim, I'd do whatever they asked me to do to protect you all, because that's my sense of humanity. I mean, you just don't, you don't do that, and you don't get what you want by hurting other people. I'd rather give you what I have than see you suffer, because it doesn't make me feel good at all to say, well, I got $100 and I'm looking at you and you're hungry or you're sick or you need medicine or you need shelter. Well, why should that make me feel good?
What's the worth of money in that case? Right.
Well, I look at what Mama used to tell us. What does it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? And to me, your soul is your humanity. It's what you think and how you feel about the people around you. And a lot of people think and feel the same way. A lot of people I talk with, we have discussions that would blow your mind because you wouldn't think that a group of people felt like that. But we do what we have to do. I had 3 children. I wanted my children to have a better chance than I did. I got out of nursing school. I went to work at a Catholic hospital, supposed to be a religious place, a good place. And you know what happened to me?
No.
I went to work there. I worked like a dog. And I wanted to succeed in what I did. And there were 3 other girls that was working there with me. One of them was an Indian girl, the other one was black. And had this young woman that she was traveling with her husband in service, and they were Canadian. And she was just a nice to know person. I mean, she just made you feel comfortable and everything, you feel like you could say, boy, this or that, and nobody would think anything about it. And one day she was in the medicine room, and we had this young white girl that had come to work. Green as grass, just got out of nursing school, didn't know nothing. We had to show her everything she did. We had to go behind her and correct her mistakes. So one day this girl, she was a nursing assistant. And Pavy, she was the kind of person, I don't care how bad your day was, she could make it better. Have you known people like that?
I've known. Those are very special people.
And
I work in comedy,
so
I don't get to spend a lot of time with those folks. But
her last name was Pavy. She was French Canadian. And I don't care how bad your day was, she could say something to you to make you smile or to make you feel better. And she was in the medicine room that day, and we had got our checks. And this little new girl that we've been carrying, she was in the medicine room, and we got our checks, and she laid her check up on the counter. And this girl opened up her check. Well, it was open, just stuck in an envelope. And she looked at it, and she said, oh, hell no. She said, this ain't right. And she had just come to work there, but she was white. And they were paying her more. I'd been there 2 years, and it's a good Catholic hospital. It's a good religious place. It's supposed to be so righteous. And this other girl had been there about 18 months. And this other one, she had been there about 15 months, because I haven't been there the longest. I've been there 2 years. And we were carrying her, doing all her work. And you know what? They started her out paying her more than I was making or either one of these other 2 girls was making. And I said, I don't have to put up with this. I said, I'm not married to this job. I told the supervisor I didn't say nothing until I was so angry. I didn't say nothing until the end of my shift. And I told her, I said, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. Oh, Prudom, why? I said, because I thought you all were honorable, decent Christian people. I said, I just found out y'all is just a lying bunch of dogs. I said, ain't a word you've ever said was true. Well, what's wrong? What happened? And I told her. I said, we come in here, we work like dogs. We do the best we can for these patients. And we pay your bills. I said, because the more patients we save, the more money you make. I said, and I find out that you go out and you hire people because their face is white. And I said, and we're black. I said, we've been here working longer for you than they have. And we know the job, we do the job, and we're carrying her. I said, and you bring her in here and start her off at more money than we're making, and we've been here all this time. I said, so I don't work for people like that. You know what she said? Who told you that? I said, does it matter? I said, is it true? Answer it and tell them that I'm busy and that I'll get back with them.
That's a
That's the
landline.
one right there.
That's an actual phone.
Mm-hmm. That's the phone we put in this house in 1960.
1960. We're recording a podcast with a landline ringing. It's okay. We can edit all this out.
Okay, so just give us like about another hour. Okay, all right. Talk to you soon. Okay.
She said, who told you that? I said, she did. I said, and showed me a paycheck. Well. I'll raise your pay. I said, no. I said, I just want you to know why I'm leaving. And I said, I will never come back here and work for you again. And I gave 2 weeks, and I said, I'm not doing this for you. I said, I'm doing it for the patients. I said, because my loyalty is to the patients, not to you. And I said, I won't walk off and leave them unattended. I said, so you got 2 weeks to find you somebody else to use. I said, but you won't use me anymore. And see, I had an advantage over some of those girls because I had a husband, and he was working at the post office, and he made enough money to take care of his family. And I was working because Beverly was going to graduate at the end of that school year, and she had already got set, had been accepted and everything to OSU. And I wasn't about to deny her the privilege of going, and I figured, well, in 2 weeks' time, I can find me another job and still be right on my same schedule. And this was what they did. And this was a good Christian Catholic hospital. And it's the kind of stuff they did. And then they asked me about religion. I said, don't talk to me about religion. I said, I believe in God. I just don't believe in man. And no, I don't go to church. I believe that God is a just God and that one day he'll come and he'll even things up. But in the meantime, I don't need no hypocritical preacher to tell me nothing, because can't nobody save me but me. The things that some of those people in the churches do, I wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't believe in adultery. I believe in the 10 Commandments. I don't believe in swapping husbands and wives and cheating on your wife and cheating on your husband.
What about if your husband is really annoying?
Then you divorce him.
I was trying to play with you there and have a joke moment, but you got to give me wisdom. Okay, fine, Miss Loletha.
if he's not acting right, then don't cheapen yourself by going out and making a tramp out of yourself. Leave him, and you get more even with him with that than anything else, because it kills him.
Because you can tramp around without him.
That's right. I can do what I want to do on my own. As what did the old boy say? I can be bad all by myself.
How is it? I guess it all comes back to not getting what you're worth, because then somebody makes money, and we do live in a for-profit world, mm-hmm. on top of all the other problems we have to deal mm-hmm. with, mostly because it's patriarchy. That's how I think about this world we're living in. Why is it we're having the same problem about just getting paid the same rate for the same work, no matter your skin color or your gender?
You know what it is? Male superiority. Because the average woman, if you give her the same training, the same education, and give her the same job, she'll outdo that man every time. And they don't want that. They want to say that they are better they're smarter than women. And they're not so darn smart because we the one that brought them here. We were stupid.
Oh my Lord, I think that every morning.
We are stupid because we the one, it's our fault we brought them here.
Mm-hmm.
We just should have never had, it should have been an all-woman society. Then we wouldn't have all these problems.
Someone's got to do the yard work.
I'd rather do my own work than put up with one of them. I mean, seriously, who needs them? They're just, we made them what they are. Behind every successful man, there's a smart woman. And they want to say women don't know anything. I said, if they give us a chance, they might find out what we do know.
But that's why they keep us from showing what we got, don't you think?
They just want to keep you barefoot and pregnant. That's all they want.
Well, I think Viagra is covered if you need insurance, but your birth control may or may not be.
Well, you know what? I fight about that every day. I feel like that a woman's body is hers. And if you want to get pregnant, fine. If you don't, fine. If you're into a financial situation, I think it's a greater sin to bring all these babies into the world and let them suffer, and you can't feed them, you can't clothe them, you can't educate them, you can't properly take care of them. Then why do you need them? I think those children are better served if you take the birth control and you never get pregnant in the first place. I raised 3 children, and I work like a dog to raise those kids and to give them the necessities, the things that they need. They never had all of the extras, but they did have a college education, and they had food and clothing and the necessities, and they had medical care. But my husband and I each worked every day, all the time, to give that to 3 children. It took 2 grown people to work like that, for them to have that.
Do you find we have become much more, or significantly much more materialistic as a nation, as a people?
Yeah, because the rich are founded on money, and they want to hang on to this position, and they feel that the more they can oppress the people below them, the people making less money, less education, then they can profit off of that, because they can go out and hire you for $1 an hour. Or they want women, because now a woman can be 10 times smarter than a man. But do you think they want to pay her what they pay him? No, because that takes away from their masculinity. That means that they are not as good as they thought they were. And I know women that you could take Joyce and give her a pencil and piece of paper and ask her anything you wanted about finance, and she could answer you, would never have touched that pencil to that paper, and she could figure it in her head and tell you this. And I know people that hired her simply for that. They say their money was disappearing and they wasn't getting this and getting that and the other, and they hired her, and she'd find where it was going and show them. And she could go in the grocery store and you give her a list with 20 items on it, and she would go down there, those counters, put those things in that basket and check them off as she went down. Not write any figures or anything, just check them off. And when she get up to the cash out station, you ring that stuff up and she could tell you to the penny how much it was worth and even add the tax to it. And you better not be 2 cents off, because she'd make you find it. And boy, I used to hate to go to the store with her, because she would get up and she never wrote it down. It was just all up here. And she was just a genius like that with math. And you know what she liked to do? Cook.
Yeah.
That was her thing, cook. She loved to cook. And she worked. And she went to college, and you would have thought she would found something else she liked to do. But that's what she wanted to do, and that's what she did. And probably she'd still be doing it if she hadn't had that heart attack and died.
I'm sorry about that.
It was just, but she did a good time, because she was 55 when she died. But the doctor said her heart just wore out, and she died. But that was her brain. And how many men do you know can do that?
Well, they're thinking about sex.
Well, a lot of them, 50% of them, that's all they can do is think. Now you're supposed to delete that.
No.
See, I forget you recording this. You should know better than to turn me loose like this.
Oh, I think we should get a little loose. Let's get a little loose. You know, people think, and this is very ageist, people think if you have wrinkles on your face and you got some white in your hair, you don't like a little,
you're worthless.
Raunchiness. Worthless, yes, ma'am, but also that you never, think a sexual thought or say an untoward word or, kind of word that would have gotten your mouth washed out with soap. But, you're a grown woman, so you can just say what you want.
That's why I feel comfortable saying what I want, because I got my mouth washed out with soap for years and it didn't do any good.
Me too. I got the same treatment.
And people were scared, and they'd come drag you out of your house in the middle of the night. And next day they'd find you hanging down in the woods somewhere dead. And here this woman with these little children is left.
Right.
And they'd have their sheets, and the reason they would cover themselves up, because this was all the prominent people in the community, the doctors, the lawyers, the sheriff, and all of them. And they would put these sheets over themselves to cover it up.
You mean the KKK?
Yeah. That's who farmed it. That's who ruled it. People just like that old sheriff out there in Arizona that Trump just pardoned. It was hard for him to abuse all those people.
Yeah.
I don't know what this world's going to come to, but it's a sad situation. And I lived 89 years. And I lived through the time when my mother would, boy, if dark came, it was getting dark, and one of my brothers wasn't home, she was walking the floor from the front to the back, scared to death, wondering where they were. And when they came in, boy, she was relieved. She'd locked that door and they weren't allowed to go back outdoors. Because if anything happened, they'd find some black man and say he did it. And heaven help you if you was out walking the street coming home from work late or doing, working or something. And then they had to pay, they wanted to get away with it. So they just pick some other black person and say he did it.
Don't they still kind of do that a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, they would
a lot of it they do.
Yeah, the Missouri just took someone off death row. They were going to, I was going to say assassinate. I think they call it execute is what they call it. Execute. They were going to execute a man who had been shown to be innocent. DNA evidence proved this. He was given a reprieve last minute. But this is 2017. And it's probably only because people were calling and emailing the governor per activists trying to get involved in this stay.
A lot of times they know who did it. They know that it's somebody, it might be that old sheriff out there in Arizona that did it. And they're going to accuse any person that they can get away with. And then people quit talking about it. And they know who did it. They did it themselves. And I think that's why we're having many problems now with people killing the policemen and all of that. Not all the policemen are bad, but it's a lot of them that are not good. And, the color of your skin don't make you who you are. That's the biggest lie was ever told. That just makes you a scapegoat. And they blame you for everything that they don't want to take responsibility for. And it's just like, I was talking with a group of people the other day, and they were saying about the political situation. And I said, what made this situation what it is? I said, Donald Trump got up there and he preached all that racial hatred. He talked about all this persecution and what he's going to do and all of his off-color remarks and all of that. And I said, and he's telling them that the black people and the Mexican people and the Indian people, the Jewish people, are their problem. Those people are not their problem. He's the problem. Because if one person is abused and accused unjustly, you're doing it to the whole population. Because as long as they've got a few ignorant people that wants to blame society for their problems when they are the biggest problem of them all. They made their problems. They do this to keep you impoverished. If they can keep you desperate and down and in need, you're going to go along with whatever's going to go along because you can't help yourself. If you're hungry, tired, dirty, and don't have anything, and then you look around and you see other people, you see that boy down on the corner, and he got on some stylish jeans and a fancy jacket, shine shoes, and you think, if I just had that. And then somebody say, well, you run these drugs around the corner for me. Or you take these to that man down the block, and I'll give you $1. You're going to take that $1, not even realizing the consequences. Too young and dumb to even know their consequences. All you can think about
is now.
Is I got $1 and I'm going to buy me something to eat. And I blame the political system for it. And they want it like that because why do you think they fight so hard to get up there in Washington and stay there? It's because them lazy suckers, half of them have never done an honest day's work in their life. And they've been living off the government forever. Then they want to talk about these women getting food stamps to feed these little children. Well, I don't care if the woman is not worth a damn. I'm sorry, I forget I'm recording.
Well, you can say other words than that. You can go
Oh, I can say that.
Yes, ma'am.
Well. Mama's dead and Albert is dead and all, so it don't matter. They the ones that would raise hell if they heard me saying it on the air. But I mean, it's sad to think that these little children are suffering through no fault of their own, and these politicians are sitting up there stealing money, buying sex, molesting children, doing all this kind of stuff.
Evilness.
And they covered up.
Tell me about the politicians in Okmulgee. How do I say that?
It's Okmulgee.
Okmulgee County. Okmulgee. I would imagine. Okmulgee.
It's not Oka.
It's Okmulgee.
Yeah.
Is there an L in that, or I'm just making things up? Okmulgee.
Yeah.
Mulgee.
Okmulgee County.
That's right.
I would imagine that's named for the indigenous people. And those people who were there in that county. Now, tell me about your sister. God rest her soul. She's not here with us anymore.
Well, she was a Democratic representative of the people. And when I said representative, she was unpaid. But she fought for everything that she could to make things better. And not just for the black people, but for all the people. And they had this big election coming up. And they were electing new county commissioners and all this. They had, in this election, part of the stuff they were fighting for was better roads and better education for the schools and for the county and just road fixing and all this, just basic necessities. And in this bill, they were supposed to fix all these county roads where the mailmen and school buses and stuff had to go. Well, on this road that ran right in front of my sister's house, it was just a quagmire. I mean, when it would rain, it was that old black dirt, and it would just be muddy. And the school bus would pass right down that street, picking up those white children that lived out in that area. And all of the black children in that area went to this little old 3-room schoolhouse down at the end of this muddy road. And it was Northwest School. And
that was a black school.
Yeah, and it had 2 black teachers. And all the children in that area, from beginners up to the 8th grade, went there. And I'll be honest, them 2 women was probably about as qualified to teach a class as some 14, 15-year-old computer savvy kids now could do better than they were doing. And so people went out and they voted in mass because they wanted those roads fixed. All those children that had to walk to those rural schools and everything, it was walking down mud trails and stuff, little children. And so they went and they put that on the ballots, and it passed. And they were everybody around there in the country was excited because it was days the mailman couldn't get through. The roads were so bad.
See, it's a wait for your mail. Because the mailman couldn't pass up to your home.
He couldn't come down those muddy roads, and they just had the mailboxes stuck on the side of the road, and the mailman got stuck. I've seen the time when Albert say some of the neighbors had to go pull him out of the mud.
Okay.
And so they passed the bill. Well, when they got the bill passed, these county commissioners, they started taking this money and all this county equipment, and all of them had these big ranches and things because they had the money to win elections. They was out there sitting down, having their roads from the highway paved maybe a quarter of a mile down to their houses, putting that blacktop in. So Albert and this friend of hers, they I bet you right now, I hope they're not in hell with any of them people because they probably really giving them a bad time. Because they messed them up. 3 of them went to jail.
Who did?
3 of those commissioners.
The commissioner? Because Alberta sounds?
Yeah. They went to jail because when they turned them in, what they did, Albert and this little Mary, I can't think of what her last name is, and they got them some cameras. And they went and drove out.
So Alberta went with Mary?
Yeah, Mary and Alberta went together, and they went out there, and they drove down around through the country. And everywhere those commissioners had paved those roads from the highway down to their houses, they took pictures of them. And they couldn't take them in Okmulgee because they took them into Okmulgee. They was all in cahoots, you know.
Uh-huh.
they went to Oklahoma City. They took him to the state's attorney general in Oklahoma City. Well, he looked at those pictures, and he told him, he said, well, we're going to send our investigators out. And Alberta said, well, you give us our stuff back until you go get yours. She said, and we'll compare them. So he said, well, you don't have to worry. He said, Miss Sims, he said, we're going to look into it. Well, see, Alberta was in cahoots with all them the people that was in the Senate from down through there, and in the House from down through there.
In the county?
And yeah. And so she was with them, and they would one told her, say, don't y'all take it to Oklahoma, say you take it to Oklahoma City.
So the people that she knew who were politicians in her own county told her, don't come here, go to the Capitol.
No, they didn't tell her. Not because they were the ones stealing the money.
Okay.
The ones that told her that was their state senator, not their state senator, their U.S. senator and the U.S. congressman. Max Sinar and Glenn Johnson and them, they were in the House of Representatives in Washington. And this other guy, he was in the Senate, the United States Senate. They told her and Mary to take him to Oklahoma City to the state's attorney general. But see, they knew they had him. And evidently they told him because he was aware of them when they got there. And Glenn Johnson told him and said, you show him what you got. He said, but you bring it back. You keep it. Don't give it to them. And so they goes out there, and they found worse than what Albert and them had found, because they had the authority to go look deeper.
So they came out with a warrant?
They went to, 3 of them went to jail, and the other 2 lost their job. So I think that was pretty bad. And that's when they got mad at her and was going to pull Wayne out of college because she had messed him up. And that's when she went to court with him and told him, so you take him out of college, you take Judge so-and-so's son, and you take lawyer so-and-so's son, and Dr. so-and-so's son. And it was a whole bunch of them other kids from down there in Okmulgee County. And they were all in college just like Wayne. And a lot of them was staying in college just to keep from going to the Army.
And this was during Vietnam?
Yeah, that was Vietnam. Yeah, it was Vietnam. And so they didn't send him. So he stayed on, went on, graduated from OSU. 2 days after he got home, they had his papers there waiting on him. So Albert said, that's all right. She said he'll go when they go. So they didn't have a choice. They had to call all of them up. But that was the kind of dirty stuff they did.
They tried to get Alberta back for showing the truth to power.
They was going to punish Wayne.
Send her son
for what she
to
did.
Vietnam, even though he was a college student.
Yeah, he was
which
ready
was
to
a draft deferment. At the time,
had a draft deferment
because you were in school.
They sent Wayne and this other boy, a little poor country boy like Wayne, they sent them up to Connecticut to train these seek and search dogs. And they had their own compound, their own little truck they drove, had everything up there. And they took all them white boys and sent them over there overseas. And this white girl that she knew Alberta, and she and Alberta had worked. Alberta had looked out for her and helped her a lot. She told Alberta, she said every time Alberta go by the courthouse, she'd say, hey, Alberta, where's Wayne now? How's he doing? And Alberta said, oh, he's doing fine. He's still up in Connecticut playing with his dogs. And so they'd just get so mad. And this little white girl, she thought it was funny. And she loved to rib him about it. Alberta said, she told her, you better shut up. She said, they're going to be done throws you out of your job. She said, if they do, she say, I know where all their bodies is buried. She outdid them.
So Wayne ended up in Connecticut for Vietnam.
Playing with dogs.
Excellent.
They hated it. And they hated her. And boy, after that, they left her alone.
Alberta Sims filed a lawsuit to desegregate the schools in that county after desegregation was allegedly in effect. Mm-hmm. Tell me about Alberta's determination to integrate the schools in Preston, Oklahoma.
Well, a lot of it started with the county commissioner stealing all the road money. And the roads were just flat mud. You couldn't hardly, she lived about less than a quarter of a mile from the old Highway 75. And once you turned off of there, that old road was that wide. And one car had to almost pull in the ditch for the other one to go around it. And when it rained, it was just a quagmire. It was that old black dirt, and it was just gummy. And the kids had to walk down that road about 2 miles from where they lived to this school at Northwest. And out there where they lived, it was just poor farming countries. And a lot of the people, if they had an old truck or an old car, the man was using it to get to work and everything. So that meant the kids had to walk down this mud path to school and back home, rain, shine, sleet, or snow. And here was and they were all those people out in there. The black people owned their land. So here this big new school bus driving past all these little black children, throwing mud on them and everything, and they walking down this mud road going home to get an education. And people will take so much for so long, and then they get tired and they fight back the only way they can, and they did. And that's when my sister took them to the federal courts about here they had this brand new school, and bad was so bad they were paying taxes in this area, and then here their children and grandchildren and things had to walk down this muddy road.
We're talking about landowners.
Yes, and
Oklahoma
they were paying
families.
Yeah, and they were paying taxes. And so then when they took them to court, they integrated those schools with Preston. See, when Mark was in school, Mark was the first black kid that went there. And then the sheriff went down there and told him, he said, I'm bringing this boy here this morning. And Grant wouldn't let Alberta go because he said, if they said something, she'd be fighting with him. He said, Bert, you stay home. I'm going to take him. I'm going with the deputy marshals. And they had the federal marshals down there. They came to the house and got him and Mark and took him down there. And that marshal told him, told that principal, he said, you see the way this young man is looking? He said, that's the way I want him to look when he come home. And Grant said, I got to thinking, Lord, I hope Mark don't go out there and get to playing football and all that with them boys. And, here was the saddest part of all. All them kids, the little white kids, and it wasn't hardly any black kids. They were mostly white. And they would be down there every weekend, fishing in the pond, playing in the pond. They'd come in the house, sit down there, Albert would feed the whole bunch. Little brown ones, little white ones, little black ones. And she'd have half a dozen kids maybe sitting around there on the weekends, because all them kids come down to her house. And they had horses down there, and Grant put them all to work. All them kids come down there. And when it was time to go round up the cows or whatever, they had to go do help too. But you go down there, you didn't know if black or white people lived there, because all those kids would come down there on the weekends and play. But they couldn't go to school together. And that was ridiculous. Their mamas and daddies would come down there and sit down and drink coffee and stuff with Albert and Grant down at their house.
Right.
And this was okay, but they didn't go to school together. So when that federal marshal took them down there and he told that principal, he said, you don't have no more chances. He said, we're going to close this school. He said, and all of y'all going to have to find somewhere else to go. And you better believe Mark went to school there from that day on. And he was with all his little buddies, because all those kids that he was going to school with was down at his house every time he turned around playing with them. And that...
Isn't that one of the weirdest things of racism? Little kids don't think that way.
No, and we were talking about that not too long ago. Children are not born racist, prejudiced, or anything like that. Children are born to kindness. And if you're kind to a little child, they don't look at see what color you are or anything. In their eyes, you're beautiful because you did something nice for them. And all of this stuff is preached into these little children's minds by their parents, because they don't know the difference. I was babysitting for this lady when I was a young kid. I was about 16, I guess, in high school. And she said, her little girl said, Loletha, did you go to church yesterday? I said, yeah. I said, I go to church every Sunday. She said, well, when we die and we go to heaven, are you going to be our maid? And when you're young, it just infuriated me, because I hated it, how hard I had to work trying to help my mother buy my clothes to go to school, buy this or to help with that. I looked at her and I said, I hope not. I said, because if I do, I don't want to go to heaven. I said, heaven's not for me. And she said, but I love you and I want you to go to heaven with me. I said, well, I'd like to go to heaven with you too, but not as your maid. I said, I'm tired of working. And her mother was, I didn't know she was headed in there. And she heard me. And she told that little girl, she said, look, God loves everybody. And said he loves Loletha just like he loves you. And she said, if you're mean and bad, he's not going to love you. And she said, isn't she good to you? And little girl said, yeah, I love her. And because I was the first face she see in the morning, last face she see at night. Sometime when they got home, I done bathed them, fed them, put them to bed. And I was just sitting there waiting for one of them to get there to take me home. Because Mama said the only way she can go help you is if you bring her home. Because she can't walk across town after dark by herself. You know, those little children, she just wanted to go to heaven. And she liked it because they never would cry or anything. You know, when their mom would leave and I was there with them. And they were sweet little old kids, and I didn't blame the kids. For what they were, I liked the little children. But she was so disappointed because she wanted to know, was I going to be their maid when I died and went to heaven? And it just coming out of, you know, what's in your heart comes out of your mouth. And I said, well, if I got to be a maid when I go to heaven, I don't want to go to heaven. And I don't.
No.
If I don't have equal justice, heaven is not the place for me.
I don't think that's what would happen there. I think there's equal justice in heaven.
I certainly hope so.
That's what the book says.
Well,
that's what all the books say.
You know, I've read so many
all
books.
All the holy books.
And so many of them have lied until I don't know what to believe sometimes and what not to believe. I said, where's the justice in this world? Look like the more evil people do, the more they prosper.
Yeah.
And the good people that's trying to do good, look like their times get harder and harder.
Does it feel like there's more evil now?
It's more subtle than it used to be. They feel superior to do all these hateful, racist things. And what you destroy, you got to live with it. You can destroy all you want to, and the worse you do, the worse you make the country. But where are you going to go? Where are you going to live? Because you're stuck there. So we're in a no-win situation.
My grandma used to say, let them make all the money they can while they're in office because they're either going to be dead or in jail when they get out.
She was right, but not enough of them go to jail.
True that. I just want to ask you real quick because I know Alberta, Bert Sims, used to run around with a gun in her bag.
No, she didn't run around with it. She walked around with it. She had this old big purse, like a little suitcase. And she had this big old, what kind of car was it? Was that an Oldsmobile? That gray one?
I think it might have been, yeah.
A big old gray car. And boy, it was just like new. Because she rode around it like a queen. And she would take that old pistol. It's 38, one of them long barrels. And she'd take it and fold it between a piece of newspaper. She'd lay it here on the seat beside her. And she'd set a pocketbook so it wouldn't roll off the seat. And she'd drive up and down them country roads day or night by herself. And when she'd go out, and she lived right on this busy road after they blacktopped it. And they called it Alberta's Road. But she'd lay that pistol, fold it, and lay it in that folded newspaper right here. Well, all she had to do was reach under it. And she would shoot it. And I used to say all the time, Lord, I hope them people don't mess with her and make her too mad. I said, God, sure would hate for her to go. I said, because you know, with her being black and they being white, she shoot one of them, she going to jail. Mama said, well, Bert, you all not go on them roads at night, and you all not go to them places like that. She said, because somebody going to hurt you. And she say, and she tell my mother, well, you got to bring ass to get ass. And honey, she had that old pistol, and she had that newspaper, and she just had it laying on the seat, and she had it folded half, and she had that pistol laying under there and paper down like this. And then she carried this old pocketbook. Girl, you'd have to go have surgery if you packed that thing around for half a day. That was the heaviest pocketbook I ever seen in my life. And shoot, she wasn't scared of nothing. She'd drive them country roads by herself, go down to the meetings and tell them people what they was bringing on themselves and how they should get out there and vote and who they should vote for. And I don't know if they was scared of her or what, but they'd go vote for the way she'd tell them.
What advice would you give anybody who hears this with 90 years on the planet, basically?
It's time for a change and for people to realize the damage that they do, and that only will make this world better is by people working together for the good of everybody and forget about their personal gain.
That's beautiful. One love. I'm sorry for all the struggles you've been through, and I'm happy for your strengths.
Well, Lisa, they say those things make you stronger.
I would like to thank you very much for being generous and coming and sitting down with me and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for asking me, because so many young people, they don't know their history.
Amen to that.
And they need to know this. And soon, I'm 89 years old, and the people like me that lived it and know what it's like, they'll be gone. So these young people need to hear this and to know that working together, you can make it better. But nobody can stand alone and accomplish it. And it's an ongoing job. But I really appreciate the opportunity of discussing this with you all. And it's not easy to talk about the hardships that you've gone through, and through no fault of your own. And so I just hope that it will encourage other people, and it will help the young people to know that you can survive.
Thank you so much, Loletha Prudom, for sitting down and sharing your story with me and all y'all who listened. Please join me at my website, lisalandry.com, and sign up for my email list. And please remember, we're all in this together. The more things change, the more they seem to stay the same, but we didn't create this reality. We were just born into it. So let's change it. Peace.